It is Tuesday, the 18th of the 3rd, 2025, and there are very many F1 news and update threads at which we need to pull. I know it's Chinese Grand Prix weekend coming up and it's going to be chaos. Of course it is, but it feels like we're still post-morteming for the epic Grand Prix that was Australia. We'll dive into a couple different threads. Lando Norris talking about why Australia doesn't matter to him. The one that they call Toto, the boy who cried wolf, saying that he needs more of Mercedes, talking about the foibles of that car. So to Andrea Stella, saying that he doesn't understand why McLaren is so fast. We'll talk to that. Mark Hughes writing a brilliant article for Motorsport magazine, saying that there is an Achilles heel in that MCL39. We'll talk about the Delta. Pause for thought, cause for concern as far as the other 9 teams on the grid not named McLaren. So too, we'll talk about Lewis Hamilton. There is hope. There's something that come out the Grand Prix that we didn't even realise. And also we'll talk about Maximilian Verstappen's God tier moment in the pits. And final topic on the docket, we'll talk about legal matters, all things FIA, regulatory settings, regulatory capture, conflict of interest. It's Techie Turtle, Kayla, Jeannie, Umach. Go on, let's get into that. Lando Norris has said something to this effect: that I've not won the championship yet, so I don't care. Australia to me doesn't even matter. Well, this is a difference in extents and not kinds, Lando Norris. Whilst I understand he's looking to put forth front and centre mental fortitude, understand that what he needs to get is 25 points on a consistent basis, that he will be judged in 2025 in long form. It's a difference in extents, Lando, because dominance, some say, and excellence even, is what you do every day. Listen, let me tell you about this gap between McLaren and the rest. On average, if you go by the mean, we have the Delta at anywhere between 0.4 and 0.5. That's in a wet race. We know that Maximilian Verstappen is a shark in the wet. So what does that mean going forth into China, where the circumstance will be more beneficial, more favourable for the MCL39 now? We know that that's a medium speed merchant of a car. So 0.4, some say, will translate into anywhere between 0.5 and 0.6 at the Chinese Grand Prix, particularly if it's not wet. These are the variables for which we have to normalise, Lando. So I think this does matter. Again, if you're having the conversation about who's going to win the championship, who's going to pick up the most points over the next 23 races. So too, we know that McLaren have an Achilles heel already. As far as that car, people said that it was reliability, that they've done some very ambitious things with that front suspension with a view to optimise for anti-dive and anti-squat. Therefore, some have said that they might need to reinforce their parts, make them stronger, because they will suffer at some point, Mark Hughes said once upon a time, from reliability. Now today, though, Motorsport magazine's Mark Hughes writes a different article and says that McLaren might have a different Achilles heel by dint of some of Lando Norris's comments. He says as follows, and I quote, "These low grip tracks like Las Vegas, we really struggled around them last year. It really highlighted our issues with the front of the car, the graining, the lack of rotation. We know that though. We know where we're going to struggle this year. Even in Bahrain a couple of weeks ago, we came out confident, but everyone was hyping us up a lot," says Lando Norris, mainly just because our high fuel pace was very, very strong. But on low fuel, we were struggling. Oh, the humanity. I did not know this, Umanch, that they were struggling on low fuel. What are we talking about? I did not see that in testing. Anytime they went to go and push out a cheeky purple sector, it was almost there, available, ready to go, on tap for one Lando Norris. I don't know this struggle, this problem of which Lando speaks. He continues, "We were not as quick as some of the others," says Lando. Again, this is on low fuel hot lap settings. "Even if we took all of our fuel out and maxed the engine," says Lando Norris, "I don't think we would have been quicker. We know we have work to do going forward." Bloody Nora, Lando. Press K1 on the straight, says Barack. It's chaos from Lando, this. A very unique brand of truth telling us that the MCL39 isn't perfect. notwithstanding the fact that it had anywhere between 0.5 and 0.4 on the rest of the field, particularly in this instance, one Maximilian Verstappen in his RB21. Stella, too, has come out and said he's struggling to explain why they're so quick. Oh, the humanity. One of the oldest truisms in F1 history, right? It's harder to explain why you're fast than why you're slow, courtesy of one Peter D. Winter. But I think this is massively foreboding. It portends to more dominance at the hands of OJ Piastri and one Lando Norris. So to another plot that I need to tell you guys about. Lewis Hamilton, not his easiest run, right? Some say that with that P10 finish, that Lewis Hamilton had the worst debut of any Ferrari driver since Luca Badoer in 2009. Second worst of the 21st century. When you check it out, it's chaos. Ollie Behrman 7th, Charles Leclerc finished 5th in 2015. Sebastian Vettel on his debut finished a P3 in 2014. P7 from Kimi Raikkonen on his return in 2010. Fisichella 2009, P9. You get where I'm going with this. However, you see more evidence today, evidence that the Sky F1 internationally syndicated broadcast didn't talk about. You see that when Oscar Piastri was overtaking Lewis Hamilton in the opening stages of the Grand Prix, that there was a cheeky touch which left, therefore, one Sir Lewis Hamilton with a dodgy, damaged front wing. If you judge Sir Lewis Hamilton's performance normalising for the fact that he had a damaged car, then there is favourable variance now. You have to infer that Lewis Hamilton was well capable, had his car not been damaged, of going much quicker, getting much closer to Charles Leclerc in race pace. Now, there's a conversation going forward that sounds something like this, that Ferrari have focused too much on the hype and not done enough due diligence of the strategic and operational variety. I would contend that we've got to normalise again. That conversation, that school of thought is now impacted to the downside because of what we know, that Lewis Hamilton's car was damaged all of the races near us. Makes no difference. Oh, and by the way, if you guys go over to the Reddits, there's some footage of Maximilian Verstappen. Stop glazing Max Verstappen. How can you not, chat? There's a bloody decent performance from Max Verstappen, keeping the pressure on Lando Norris the entirety of the Grand Prix. You saw how dominant that McLaren was when it got dry for a second. McLaren, in the hands of Lando and Oscar, were down the bloody road to the tune of 16 seconds in a few laps. They are quick, and yet and still, that the one they call Maximilian Verstappen was able to navigate the multitudinous travails of a track and a Grand Prix epitomised by changing circumstance. You guys have heard me say on a gazillion occasions, anybody that's driven a car in anger around a track will tell you that it's much easier to drive a wet race than it is changeable circumstances. If the variables are changing, if it's wet one lap and then it's dry the next, you don't know where you are. You have no benchmark. You're always having to recalibrate for this. Just like what happened to Lando and Oscar. Last turn 11, turn 12, the last time they went round there, it was dry and it was grippy. This time, however, they find themselves on the green. It's changeable circumstances that are always difficult. Maximilian Verstappen, though, very few offs, one off notable to speak of. And you would argue that that was at the altar of tyre deg, that his tyres were struggling more than Maximilian Verstappen was struggling. There's been a piece of footage released that I want to try and talk you through. I would show it, but I don't want to get in trouble. Max, when he goes into the pits, full Oppo lock. One of these ones, it's chaos. Go and check it out. Max Verstappen in the pits, by the way, not on the track where you've got this wide berth within which to operate. In the pits, chat, goes full throttle and does one of these, done one of these. He's so quick and reflexy on the steering. I don't know, beggars belief. Go on then, final topic on the docket. Let's talk about some FIA. I don't know how to pull at this. There are so many narratives and plots. Look, let me tell you first and foremost, something that nobody else is talking about. The Concord Agreement was signed over the course of the weekend. 10 teams, no 11 kind of, with Cadillac F1, have now signed up to the new Concord Agreement, dictating all the terms as far as the commercial setup of Formula One going forward. Why is this relevant? Well, normally you would expect the FIA to be invited around the table for them to rubber stamp their governance portion of the Concord Agreement, but the 10 teams went ahead and signed it without them. Why is this significant? Well, now it's incumbent on the FIA to go and do what they need to do separate from the commercial circumstance. The FIA are not involved in that. Their remit and or scope is to make sure that the rules are instituted across all related parties in a way that's true and fair and representative and consistent. Go and do that then. These are the 11 teams now as of 2026 saying as much to the FIA that we are over here as far as the commercials and you are over there as far as the regulations. Go and do that then. Institute the governance framework in a way that's true and fair and consistent, and don't come back over here. We don't want to hear you, Mohammed bin Sulayem, talking about the asset value of the commercial rights holder so that your mates in Saudi or like wherever, the Middle East more broadly, can get a cheeky deal when they're bidding for the commercial rights holder. What are you talking about, Mohammed bin Sulayem? And this is it. You know, I'm not talking out my AWS here. These are things that have happened. Mohammed bin Sulayem's coming under pressure, chat, that the 10 teams went away and did that over the course of the Australian Grand Prix weekend puts additional pressure on Mohammed bin Sulayem. So too, let me talk about Cadillac F1. In the Concord Agreement, they've agreed that the dilution fee for Cadillac F1 in 2026 will be $450 million US. Going forward, however, we understand that the pie is growing. The F1 is doing one of these, parabolic in terms of its growth, parabolic in terms of the new attention dollars that it has since acquired by dint of Drive to Survive 2021-2 and is keeping. That means something. These teams don't want to give away, especially if F1 now is the house that they've built. Why would you get a lodger in now? Not at 450. That's why the dilution fee for any new participants, a 12 team per se, as an example, which again the Concord Agreement as it stands now allows for a 12 team. If a 12 team were to come in, 450 as a dilution fee, get away with you. That dilution fee would be 600, nearer 600 million US dollars. Chaos theory. And some say, the legend that is Jose within his latest newsletter, some say that 600 million is still quite cheap, lest we forget a rising business tide, a commercial business tide, floats all F1 boats. Flavio Briatore and Alpine are still trying to get that team in a state of readiness to sell all of the teams in 2026 and 2027 by dint of inflation, interest rates, the growing quantity even of attention dollars being spent on Formula One globally. All of these teams will be worth at a minimum $1 billion plus the cost cap. As at the time of writing, 130 million. That means that they can only spend so much, and so their bottom line increases as a proportion of their operating costs. This is chaos, chat. It's a license to print money. Jose Wood writes also that you want to be aware of this as far as Cadillac F1. Where are GM to be seen in this occasion? Where are GM? Only nominally is there association to Cadillac F1 or TWG Motorsports. That's the registered entity that are due to come on the grid as at 2026. Where are GM? I thought this whole thing was meant to be fueled at the hands of GM because GM are going to come in as an engine manufacturer. But per the filings, GM are nowhere to be seen. And again, if we draw this back to Mohammed bin Sulayem, why were Cadillac F1 rushed through so quickly? It was rumination. We are checking, and then all of a sudden they pushed Cadillac F1 through super quick. Does it have anything to do with the fact that Mohammed bin Sulayem and his associations, his related parties, have business dealings with Cadillac F1 and TWG? Might it? Might it allegedly have something to do with that? And this dude wants to talk about conflict of interest at the hands of Susie Wolff. Let me tell you this, why Mohammed bin Sulayem is in trouble. Because he cannot circle the wagons anymore. There are legal circumstances coming out of his ASS. Let me tell you what they are. High Tech. You'll recall they dismissed the F1 entry of High Tech 2026 on the grounds of financial resources or lack thereof. How FIA? Financial resources and the commercial rights holder, all that stuff is outside of your remit. So how can you say that? How can you dismiss High Tech's entry into Formula One on the grounds of financial resources when financial resources is not your remit. This is just like Mohammed bin Sulayem saying the asset value of commercial rights holder of F1 is far too high. That's not your thing to say, Mohammed bin Sulayem. You are the regulator, not the commercial business arm of Formula One. What are you talking about? And so in that vein, High Tech took Mohammed bin Sulayem's FIA to court and won the first stage. There's now an arbitration case going on, allegedly. We wait and watch to see the result of that, but there could be a payment that needs to be made from the FIA to High Tech Financial Resources. What? That's how you're going to deny High Tech entry as the 11th? That makes no sense. That makes no sense. And High Tech have their ducks in a row and are going through arbitration, allegedly, with the FIA, of which Mohammed bin Sulayem is president. That's your first legal action pending. And why does that matter? Well, because money, patronage is the FIA's. That's the FIA. That's how you get re-elected, or that's how Mohammed bin Sulayem intends to be re-elected. Joe Saywood, in his newsletter, describes the presidency as a patronage. There are loads of little FIA federations, and if you keep them happy by dint of, let's say, I don't know, a $1.5 million presidential fund, then you're set to get re-elected. Imagine a circumstance where the FIA will have to pay out, I don't know, say anywhere between 1 and 2 million potentially to High Tech by dint of damages because the FIA declined them entry to F1 at the altar of financial resources or lack thereof. Then that changes everything, does it not? Let's imagine a circumstance as well where Susie Wolff is pursuing criminal damages against the FIA and Mohammed bin Sulayem for allegedly calling her out on conflict of interest. Again, she's married to Toto Wolff, but you can't say that without evidence, no. Just because a business F1 journal, a very dodgy publication, publishes something to that effect, you can't go and say that you're going to investigate Susie Wolff because of that. You need evidence, chap. Susie Wolff now, allegedly, is pursuing a criminal investigation against Moby and his organisation, the FIA, for the way in which they instituted this investigation, that we're going to investigate Susie Wolff. That's happening as we talk. So too, Joe Saywood talks about this commercial stuff. Look, WRX, you know about Rallycross. There was a judgment in 2001 that where the FIA said that they wouldn't get involved in competition, that they would just make sure that they're focused only on the regulatory stuff. Here's what Joe Saywood says. The settlement with the EU in 2001 saw the competition directorate close its investigation after the FIA said it would ensure its role would be limited to that of sports regulator with no commercial conflicts of interest. Here's why this is interesting. It sounds like Mohammed bin Sulayem wants to get involved in WRX Rallycross. How, Sway? How? How can those two things exist in the same space? If you're going to regulate it, okay, cool. But it doesn't sound like he's looking, it sounds like he's looking to buy it, get involved, therefore, in the commercial rights, in the commercial business arm of Rallycross. What are we doing, Mohammed bin Sulayem? Do you remember a couple of weeks ago when Dave Richards and Robin Reed weren't allowed in that meeting, the World Motorsports Council meeting? The FIA, Mohammed bin Sulayem said, listen, you're going to need to sign this NDA. If you don't, you're not going to sign this NDA, well, you can't come to the meeting. You remember Dave Richards kicked off and said, hang on, we've already got the NDA in our contract. What are you doing here, chap? You can't, this meeting isn't quorate if we're not there. Ergo, you can't pass anything in there if the meeting is not quorate. Connect the dots, chat. Maybe at that meeting they were having these conversations about Rallycross and WRX, looking to do something that's not, again, not within their remit. The FIA is the regulatory body, not the commercial arm. So how can they then go and talk about WRX and commercial business Rallycross? What are we doing, Mohammed bin Sulayem? You can't amend these things just as and when you want to. This isn't impromptu stuff, ad hoc. You've got to go and amend. You've got to go and tick the boxes. You've got to authorise these manoeuvres and these legislative changes at a quorate meeting. I'm going to read this out to you again because it's super important. There was a settlement in 2001 with the EU where the FIA said that it wouldn't get involved in business activities. You saw the competition directorate close its investigation after the FIA asserted that it would ensure going forward its role would be, quote, limited to that of a sports regulator with no commercial conflicts of interest. How can that exist, ladies and gentlemen of the F1 jury, in the same space as Mohammed bin Sulayem's F1 getting involved in the commercial business of WRX come Rallycross? I tell you what, chap, we're in for it. It's a pity and a shame that I see myself growing tired of talking about the FIA. There was a brilliant Grand Prix happened not long ago, the Australian one. And I want to talk about that. I want to talk about Lando. I want to talk about Max. I want to talk about Sir Lewis and Ferrari Scuderia. I want to talk about Charles Leclerc. But we find ourselves on the morning of the 18th of the 3rd, 2025, yet again, broaching the conversation that is the FIA, more pertinently, the downstream ramifications of them not sticking to their remit. What are we doing here?